Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, I'm going to start working on some more candidates, and I had Monica Irvine last week. We've had Becky Massey this week, so that is a primary contest. Early voting starts here in July. The actual primary is in August, and then this is a general election ballot, which will take place in November. But first, you have to pick between these two if you pull a Republican primary. So we're almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, check out Hollerboo24. We got some cool stuff coming up. I'm going to invite some of these candidates once they get through primary to come be part of it, because what would be cooler than a Becky Massey Stillbox Derby car? Anyway, favorite podcast writer, tell your friends about us, all that kind of cool stuff. Text us to your friends. Like I said, if you want to go back a couple episodes and talk and listen to me talk to the opponent of Becky Massey, you can do that as well. But we're going to do a show with the one and only Becky Massey, and here we go. Hey, Becky, how you doing?
I'm great, Seth. How are you doing?
I'm excited for you to be here. I'm excited to get campaign cycle in and then take some break and then go melt out in the hot sun and all that kind of fun stuff, because it's proper summer stuff. The kids are around and we're trying to get all the fun in before school gets back.
Good deal, and I get to go door knocking.
There you go. In the heat. For the sake of just trying to keep things kind of flat and even, and for people who are new to us and maybe new to you and are using this as a reference for you, let's go ahead and give me the 10, 15-minute brief history of Becky Massey. 10
or 15 minute? How about seconds? No. I'm a Knoxville native, grew up here. I've spent one Christmas away from here my whole life, graduated from the University of Tennessee, married a Knoxville boy, and we just celebrated 48 years of marriage. We got two great daughters, a granddaughter, and my career was spent almost a quarter of a century running Sir Thomas Center, serving adults with intellectual disabilities. Going to Nashville, advocating for people with disabilities, the voiceless, basically, it kind of grew on me, and in 2011, I had 2 weeks to decide to run for an open seat that Jamie Woodson was stepping down early, and I was honored to be elected then and have served since then, been reelected. I chair the Transportation and Safety Committee in the Senate and serve on the Health Committee. So that's a quick diagram of my life.
I mean, I think that's, again, that's probably the third or fourth time I've heard it now. But, there's some people that it's their first cycle. I mean, there's kids that have turned 18 this year that are going to get out and vote, and hopefully take a little bit of time and energy to bother. Because, I'm the unpopular pundit in it, and that if you're not going to bother looking anything up, don't bother voting. Like, do some research before you vote. Don't just vote for the guy your dad tells you to or whatever. That's not voting. That's not useful voting to me.
Right.
And so then. Okay, so then we can get into the brass tacks of it, because you've been at this for a hot minute, and it's not new to you. And so, what's the okay? So I guess maybe the question is, what's the motivation to keep running? Like, when is there a number of terms where you're going to call it a day, or is there particular things that you haven't completed yet that you're trying to work on? Is there something other than you feel like you do a good job and you get some reference from the community that you do a good job or whatever, that you should continue to hold the seat?
Well, that's a lot in one question.
That's how I do it,
which is usually the way it is when I'm over here with you, Seth. But no, it takes a while to learn the process. And, of course, it's not quite like Washington, where they're paid a lot of money to be up there. We're paid less than, we could file a minimum wage complaint in the state legislature and win. But so it's not as much about term limits. We have, because of the pay, because of the challenges of going to and from Nashville, you're paid on a part-time basis, but it is definitely a full-time job, full-time responsibilities. That the term limits kind of take care of itself. People move on to other elected offices. Congressman Burchett started out in the state legislature. A number of our U.S. congressmen started out in the state legislature. But for me, it's about helping people. My dad, who served in Congress, and I was not the one going to run. I was the helper bee, but like I say, it was through my disability work and my career in that I ended up realizing that I could help out more people in this role. And that's what drives me every day. If I can get up and pass legislation that saves lives, like the Silver Alert bill I passed a couple of years ago, has saved over 300 lives. I think it's 317 to date. Or that protects vulnerable people, especially, whether it's children, people with disabilities, or adult, and make that difference. And by building relationships, you can become more effective. I passed 30 of my 31 bills I passed this year, passed them unanimously. One had one no vote. Nobody in the legislature does that. And it's about working hard, making sure, not feeling like you have to get 100% of what what you start out trying to get, but making sure you're moving the ball down the road and working with people to make sure their concerns are addressed as you're moving legislation through the process. So I do feel like, and we can get into a little bit more about a couple of things that I really want to make sure I get done that I'm uniquely positioned to do. But it's really, there's just more work to get done.
Cool. I mean, that's I think that's the logical answer to that. I just so because I've asked you before. There's no long term. You don't have a federal goal in mind.
Absolutely not.
You could run. You could run for governor next in the
2 years
in the odd cycle. Yeah.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
I mean, at least you get a paycheck from that office. So.
Yeah. There's a little bit better paycheck, but no, I never thought I would run for office. I thought my life goal and career was going to be at Sir Thomas Center.
All right, so I have a tangent that I don't want to go on. Are you familiar with Arc-Knox here in town?
Yes.
I did their fundraiser, and I scared the crap out of myself because I hung off the Langley building. I
couldn't do that with the fundraiser.
I got kind of roped into it. It was no pun intended on that. I'm sorry.
I hope the ropes held you.
Apparently they can hold a truck, so they should be able to hold me.
Okay.
But I found them this year, and I think they do some fantastic work, and I was curious.
Absolutely,
because it's in the field, and so anywho, so all right. So to me, it seems to be distilling, especially in the primary part, that there's a couple of big issues that are the firebrand issues that are going on, especially on the right. And I think we got we'll just start with the school choice one. I think Governor Lee's school choice bill that failed this last cycle. All indicators say that it's going to come back in some way, shape, or form next session. And I think that is a popular issue among the electorate to want a stance on, I guess is a way to put that.
Correct.
So where are you on the school choice thing, and what do you see as far as the failures of this last one, and what changes you think are going to need to happen? Well, I guess let me back up. Where are you on the school choice bill? I'm sorry. Well,
and it's been an evolving process because I'm an avid public school supporter. I went through public schools. Our children went through public schools. My granddaughter's in public schools. I've had a boatload of family members that were teachers and good friends. But so in the past, while I've never been against school choice or vouchers, I have not voted for it in the past when it's come before us because I felt like the primary funding, we needed to do a better job of funding our public education. Funding is not always the answer. You've got to have a lot of other components. You can always just throw money at things and you don't get a better result. But I felt like we needed to invest more in public schools. In the past 10 years, we've put an additional $3.5 billion in public schools. When we changed the funding formula with the new formula, it's called TISA, but it is actually more transparent, and there's extra in there for students with disabilities, for students that are living very rural. There's a lot of low economic students, things like that. So I mean, it was the biggest one-time investment in public schools in the history of our state. So we've really ramped up the funding portion of it. And so I do understand money follows the person, because in the disability field, that is something that is done. And so I kept waiting, because I'm not on the education committee, so I'll never see something like that unless I end up on the education committee, which is doubtful because health and transportation are my two.
Right.
But I won't see something like that till it ever hits the floor.
Right.
But
okay, so all right, so I told you pre-show that we're going to try to focus on K-8 stuff, but I have a structural question for you. And so on the when you're in committee, you have more. Let me see if I get this right. Is when you're in committee, you have more of an opportunity to mold it into a particular shape.
Correct.
Where when it's just a floor vote, it's at that point it's a yay or nay from you.
It's pretty well baked by the time it gets to the floor, because you've had a lot of expert testimony in the committees. You've got more negotiations going on. There's a little bit of tweaking on some bills when it gets to the floor, but typically not. I mean, that's really the rarity. So, the misconception, I think, is this is only for students that want to go from a public school to a private school, and that's not the case. It can be going from, let's just say, Union County to Knox County, or coming to our Union County to our STEM school. There still has got to be space available. But it can go from county to county. It can go from a public school, general to public school, to a general public charter school. Or it can go to a private school. The private school, there usually is a testing component involved, so there is the accountability. And it's been the opinion on a number of folks that, some of your, quote, more, I'm going to just use the stereotypical, more elite, more expensive private schools will not accept them, because they're not going to want to put up with all the whatever they've got to do to put up with it.
Right, because that's the conservative critique of the school choice program that Lee put up, is that it's like, well, if the point of not putting my kids in public school is to not have the oversight of the state on my kids' schooling, there's no way that's going to be now they might say it's how it's going to be now, but there's no way long term that the state's not going to say, hey, we're giving you money, we have requirements for you to get this money. And so that's been one of the most interesting critiques I've seen, because most of the critique is coming from the left of public schools, the only answer. But that critique of the right, because like, if I understood it correctly, originally homeschoolers were part of it, and a coalition of homeschoolers said, no, please don't include us. We don't want that money.
That's
because
correct.
We don't want you to come in and tell us how to homeschool our kids.
Correct. So after we saw the final version of the Senate bill, I did sign on it because, one, I felt like that if I was signed on as a co-sponsor, not the main sponsor, not the one driving it, but that I would have more of an opportunity when it comes back to have some input. I still won't be on the committee, but if you're signed on, you can have a little bit more conversations than if you're ranting and raving and saying I'll never vote for it ever.
Right.
But so what happened this year was I felt like the Senate's version was the most reasonable. It was a little less expensive than the governor's version. There was a little bit of accountability there. The House version was throwing in everything with the kitchen sink, and I think it was $400 million, I believe, something like that, whereas the Senate was maybe $75 million. So there was a big chasm there, and that's why it did not ever come to a vote on that. They did not ever come to an agreement, and they worked on it. Something will come back next year. I'm not sure what it will be. I'd say they will be working on it to try to get to some kind of a consensus before we go back into session. And we'll just have to wait and see. I will have to ultimately say, it's best to never say always or never until you see the final bill. But I did end up signing on the Senate version this year as a co-sponsor.
Okay, so I mean, I think the takeaway would be you're
leaning toward.
Okay, yeah, that's a good phrasing on that.
Yes.
Because so sort of still on the topic, and this can range in a bunch of different stuff. Because you're aware I did Monica last week, and one of the things that I was pushing back with her with is, what her genesis of why she decided to run was because of a particular bill that you had co-sponsored and blah 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 blah. The specifics are not important currently. We can address that in a second. But it occurred to me when I was talking to her, it's that her stance is, I don't feel like I'm being represented by Becky, and it's like, okay, I can understand that as a thing or whatever. But then what I asked her is like, okay, so what data are you looking at that says your views on certain topics are the more representative of the district? And so the broader question I kind of get here on is, how do you, on some of the top topics that we're talking about, school choice being one of them, how do you quantify constituent agreement with the stance, I guess, for lack of a better word? Do you have a system? Because she referenced like door knocking and a short survey she does in door knocking. Do you have something similar, or through your website or anything like that, where you do some sort of polling of your constituents on topics?
Well, yes, we do some polling. I do one of my own polls. Sometimes we've run some other polls, but to me, the best polling, I have 205,000 people in my district. Representing is not necessarily agreeing with them on every issue, because you're not. There's a wide variety. I've got a very diverse district, from inner city to suburban to rural, very rural. And but to me, representing form is several different ways. One is showing up. And I show up at almost everything I'm invited to 4 out of 4 years, probably more than any other legislature.
I know. I was going to invite you to race a derby car in October with us.
Okay. If I'm in town, I will be happy to. But by showing up, people get comfortable with you. They get to know you. They don't mind telling you if there's something they don't agree with or that they don't like. They know me as Becky, not as much as Senator Massey.
I know. I feel weird because I reference you as Becky all the time, and I'm
absolutely.
Like, am I supposed to say Senator? I feel bad, but
no. I tell people, if I meet you more than once, it's just Becky. But to represent people is to listen to everybody, okay, to take that in. So by doing that, you get a sense on where the district is. And most bills that pass through the legislature pass, probably over 90% pass with bipartisan, overwhelming, unanimous, they're no-brainers. It's when you get down to about the 2% of bills that get all the conversation.
Sure.
They get the most hype.
But I think that to me is the one that I would want more polling on, and that I'd like to see more data on, because I've seen some. Okay, we'll address the elephant on this one. Abortion is a big topic for the right at large. Abortion is a big topic in the state of Tennessee since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and polling that I've seen in non-political polling is like 80-something% want at least some exceptions to what's going on. And so like that's what confused, like that's where I was kind of pushing back on. It's like, well, sure, if you're knocking on conservative doors at a list generated by the Republican Party because that's what you're doing in a primary, then sure, you're going to get 9 out of 10 people saying that abortion is the worst thing ever and they never want to see it for any reason. But that's not District 6. That's District 6 primary Republican voters. It's a very small window.
Well, and you're smart enough to know that polls, the way a question is asked, can generate certain answers.
Sure.
And that question is, there's so many flavors of that you could almost ask, well, which one of the 10 do you like best?
Right.
From, all the way, abortions all the way up to birth to no abortions at all under any circumstance, not even the life of the mom, and everything in between. I like to tell people I am pro-life from pre-birth to, all the way up to, I spent my career taking care of folks that would have been aborted, and nobody can match my record doing that. But I believe the laws we have in place, they may need to be clarified more, which clarification is always good, but we got to make sure that a doctor is not going to hesitate if the life of the mom is in danger or there could be serious bodily harm to that person. And
see, there's a philosophical fallacy at play to me. It's like, well, if it's like if you're super pro-life and you say, abortion is killing somebody, then the exception for the life of the mother doesn't make sense to me either. Well, why do we like? At what point are we choosing one over the other? And it's like, well, because they're an adult, because they pay taxes, that's why we want to keep them around. They're not going to be a cost in the future. It's just I don't agree with it per se. I just it seems a little incongruent in philosophy to me. Is the point? Well,
but if you're no exceptions even for the life of the mom, you're actually maybe killing the mom. So you can make that argument too. You can turn it the other way. So it is a very complicated argument.
Sure.
I do think science has evolved since 1970s. It showed us more now. But, and literally my career serving people with disabilities, I realize the value of all life. But I think whether you call it exceptions or clarification on what's in place now, because I think there's some doctors that don't feel like that it's clear enough. And
sure, I agree that's been one of the biggest complaints is that, and there's been a couple of stories. There was one out of Texas in particular. Texas has a very similar law to ours,
right?
In that it was, I can't remember what the specific of the issue with the mom was health wise, but it was like, we don't know yet. You're like, this is not like you're in trouble and you probably will die. But that is not enough for us to clearly make sure that we're following the law with an abortion in this case. It's a crazy spot to be in.
And it's also serious bodily harm, irreversible bodily harm to a bodily function.
Right.
So,
which would include the ability to have a child in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that may need to be clear. I mean, we clarify bills all the time.
I know, because that's one of the things I think that I like to complain about how many bills you guys do every year. What just as a guess, how many do you think are clarification bills versus like new law?
I don't know that many are clarification, but there's a lot that are updating. Like we used to say you had to mail in a report. Now we can say you send it in electronically.
Sure, but that would be a bill update.
That's a bill update. It's hard to say. Okay. I mean, it's, we pass about 600 a year. And that's an average.
Right.
And, but a lot of them are very simple tweaking, changing A to the or,
right.
I mean.
Because words matter, and they really do when you get into law stuff.
Or they're for a specific industry that really doesn't mean much to anybody else, but it really does to that industry.
I know the feeling on that one.
Yes,
sure.
I know you do.
I bother the crap out of you about that particular subset. Okay, so, all right, so again, since we did touch on the abortion thing, the short answer take is clarification at minimum. Are you on board with exceptions or not?
Well, I believe what we've got, if you want to call it exceptions, are there. I think they're strong enough to hold what some people are calling exceptions. It's like incest with a young girl. The bill that she has mentioned. Although she doesn't mention the bill necessarily, she has tried to make people think I'm pro-abortion. But it made for the youngest girls that were victims of incest under 14 that the perpetrator had to be made responsible. Incest is already illegal. It's already legal if they will not be able to have babies again because they're so young. If they carried that child to birth, but there's nothing in the law that makes that perpetrator to be able to access that, makes the perpetrator to be charged. And those scumbag, I'm sorry, needs to be charged. And if that increases, that was the primary reason I supported that we never voted on it. But that was the reason that I supported at least continuing the conversations on that. So that's pretty well where I stand.
Okay, and I think I think another one of the major topics this election cycle, I think there's probably two more that I want to touch on. I think the border control one, which is a weird one to me because it's not really in the job title. And you know how
it kind of is. Okay, let me explain how it affects us.
Because this is where this is one of my generic things that I hate about politics is how it's how convoluted, not how convoluted it is, but how convoluted it appears from our perspective, the voter.
Correct.
Because to me, the state of Tennessee as a governmental body has zero to do with federal immigration law.
Okay.
Now I understand.
You're right.
Now, let me see if I can guess where we're going. But there are things that we can do inside the state that would discourage immigrants from coming to Tennessee when they sneak into the United States, for lack of a better phrase. But it wouldn't actually be a border control issue. Other than obviously we have the Governor Lee, at least with permission or however that works, has the ability to send Tennessee National Guard.
We had to vote to fund it.
Okay.
So there's that aspect of it. And yes, we cannot control federal law. Okay. But the ramifications, and you're correct, the ramifications of the illegal immigrants on our state, and I'll fight for our legal immigrants that have come here. There was a couple of bills this year that I had to basically stop that somebody was trying to take through our transportation committee, and it was on their driver's license that people were here legally, but they were going to have to go back more often to renew it. And I said, no, we're not doing that at all, because they're here under, every legal law that there is. But as chair of the Transportation and Safety Committee, I have to look at, one, the people that are going through our state, whether they're stopping off and leaving it or transporting it through our state, all the drugs, the fentanyl, and the human trafficking, which is serious. There is instance of human trafficking in all 95 of our counties.
I had a fun personal experience with that because we were camping. We were in the camper.
Yeah.
And apparently that's a common mode of transport. And so Highway Patrol pulled us over only just to see if it would make sure that all the people in the car were supposed to be in the car.
Good for them.
Well, it was a little awkward because we were on a hunting trip, and so we had a bunch of guns in the car.
Okay. But so we've got to give the tools, and then the crime that is being committed by the illegal immigrants. So that doesn't fall under my committee as much, but we did have increased some penalties in that one this year. But the Homeland Security is under my committee. And then the Highway Patrol is. So like the license plate readers that will, if somebody has been trafficked, if a child has been kidnapped, or if at the border they know these cars are running drugs up and they suspect it and they have us look for them, we're able to identify those. So giving our law enforcement extra tools to help with human trafficking and the drug trafficking through our state is something that we can do something about. The other thing is the addiction from all these extra drugs coming to Tennessee. And like I say, fentanyl is one of the worst drugs to date in history, that it's the most devastating. But, I have a friend of one of my children that OD'd on fentanyl. It was in another state, but we went through that as a family. But it's, my work in mental health, which is, a passion of mine, in mental health and substance abuse. I co-chaired a national task force with legislators from all over the country looking at policy for mental health and substance abuse with the employment part of it, because that's how you kind of keep people stable, is you get them employed. And, so I'm working to get the new mental health hospital built back in Knoxville. I knew that we couldn't just do it because we were advocating for it, but I knew that I needed to get the state to do a study. So I work real closely with the Commissioner of Mental Health and talked to her. I got a letter from the Lieutenant Governor and Senator Briggs and I officially requesting the study, so she had the cover to do the study. And the study came back. We're 50 beds short now. We're going to be 100 beds short by 2050. And I've already got the governor in the governor's office talking about that issue. And I feel like that I'm uniquely situated to corral the regional legislators to collectively advocate for the funding for that hospital, because it pretty much goes from more or less Loudoun County all the way up to Bristol is this area that lost that big hospital.
Right, because you got to get to Chattanooga to get anything functional.
Well,
at this point,
what's interesting is more people are being served in psychiatric hospital care now annually than were at Lakeshore. So it's reaching more people, but the people that were missing basically are the ones that have the most severe persistent mental illness, or people coming from jails. They all have to go down to Chattanooga,
or the sheriff's office has to take them down because
then the time and the cost that's involved. Sure. So this is something I'll be working with our community leaders. I'll be facilitating conversations. This is one of the number one things. I've got 3 or 4, but that's one of the number one things that it may take me 2 or 3 years. But I feel comfortable that because of the need, because of the state study of the need, that we will be able to get it accomplished. It's just going to be working persistently on it to get it done.
Next time you want to do a study, let me know, because I'll give you a discount and I'll do it for you. Especially if it's something like that. Yes, we need a new mental hospital in East Tennessee.
They actually did it in-house and it didn't cost.
Okay.
So I like the commissioner when they come back and tell me those kind of things.
Okay, so we kind of we phased off of the immigration part of the conversation into the mental health part because they are related.
Well, they're related. The substance abuse thing especially. So I just wanted you to see how I feel like they're related and how I can do something to address that portion of the issue.
Okay. Because the other one to be that's referenced, that Monica referenced is on the episode, is the professional licensure, which I have a hard time with. I'm not a big fan of professional licensure in the first place. I think it's a lot of them tend to be a little redundant to me. But at least the accusation at play is that the bill is allowing non-legal Tennessee residents to obtain a professional licensure, whether it's a plumber or a cosmetologist or whatever it is.
If you read the bill, they have to be here legally.
Okay,
and so that was wrong. A professional license is not a privilege. It's not. I mean, it's not a government benefit. Okay. It is a protection one, so the consumer would know, okay, this person has the skill set. But also, if let's say the plumber is going into your home, and you may be a single mom by yourself, and you've got somebody coming into your home, that they've got a certain amount of safety that are the financial planners. So it's a protection for our citizens. But truthfully, I want people to be able, that are here legally, to be able to work, because not working is the worst. It causes mental health problems. It causes crime. But it is not a benefit. It is something that they have to earn.
Right, and I mean,
they're here legal.
I think that's the key component of the part that's important. Cause
it was totally misrepresented.
Okay,
like all the things on her flyer.
All right, easy. No, that's fine. I think it's fair. Like I could appreciate the format in the flyer that she sent, as far as like, I'm going to pick individual things and I'm going to discuss how I would have done it differently. I think that is a reasonable format. Now, to be misleading on it's a different conversation, and I think that's part of why I always want to hear from multiple people,
right? Because
I want to hear the accuracy of it. Because I think for the layperson who doesn't know how this thing works and doesn't know how the state works and doesn't know which government body has control of what,
kind of like my opponent,
right? Well, it's an easy way. It's hard for us, the regular people, to know that part, because I'm reading through this and I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh well, no, but that doesn't sound right or something like that, and then I have to go through and
it takes a kernel of truth. And then
because on the immigration one, she goes on to as far as allowing in-state tuition for for illegal immigrants. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that just doesn't seem like a logical thing. You have to be a resident of some sort to get in-state tuition from any in-state university. So, like, I don't know. It didn't track. And so getting the clarification, I think, is important. All right. So what was the other one? I had one more that I was going to do. The transportation one, we've got the new, what's the timeline on this new interstate edition that we did the big thing for a couple weeks ago out at
addressing from the split out 640 out to the split?
Because I know you still want 640, or you want a new 640 that goes even higher up.
Well, I've continually asked for a new bypass study,
right?
Because I think ultimately we need the expansion of 4075 that goes from the split to 640. Because those are the 5 of the top 7 highest average daily traffic counts in the state. And it's not sustainable, and we got to do something there.
And that doesn't even consider the growth that Knox County is taking on either.
Or the growth of Tennessee, or the growth of the East Coast. We're within a day's drive of 75% of the population.
I know. I'm taking a day's drive next week to the beach.
Good deal. Good deal. Good for you. Enjoy a little bit of the sand for me. But I think as part of the solution, we still need a bypass study, because I think ultimately we're going to need both long term. But originally, TDOT was going to just address basically the 2 interchanges, the Campbell Station, the Watt Road interchange, which are the last 2 interchanges in our area that have not been updated. And so in my conversations with the commissioner of TDOT, who I, as chair of transportation, work with constantly, and reminding him about how much traffic we have here, they have agreed to address the whole corridor holistically, as opposed to just piecemealing it.
Right.
If all goes well, which, it sometimes takes a little longer, but with alternative build model and things, we could get this done within 10 years, and which would be very fast.
Sure.
In that realm. And so that's something that that's one of the second things that will be my priority when I'm reelected. And it's, so what will happen is, I carried and passed the Transportation Modernization Act, which was the largest investment from general fund money in roads in the history of Tennessee. And so what would happen is it was $3.3 billion. The 0.3 went to every county in the state to do road projects in their area that they needed done. It was like 15 times what they normally get in a given year. So they were ecstatic over it. The $3 billion, we have, if we had done nothing, kids and people that advocated for nothing, if we only relied upon our gas tax and we looked at all the projects on the list, nothing new, but the projects on the list, kids that were in high school would have been senior citizens by the time we got them all done. And that didn't take into consideration growth. There was not an option of doing nothing. So we looked around at, physically responsible states, what they were doing, and the choice lane potential was something that was working to address traffic in Texas and Florida and Georgia and a number of different states. So we set up the enabling legislation to potentially do choice lanes in our urban areas. You would bring in an outside investor. It's not necessarily a foreign investor. It can be.
I forgot about that.
They all have, and even the ones in Texas that they have their company based in America. Okay. They may have a counterpart in France or Spain or somewhere, but they can't be in China. They can't be in Korea. They can't be in Iran. There's
a federal list that we're not allowed to do stuff with,
it's the ban list. Yes. And they don't own our roads. They would fund them and help build them and operate them and maintain them. And we take that same money that we don't have to spend there, and then we can use that to expand our roads in a suburban or a rural area that we would never get to if we didn't do this. But just because we've enabled it, they are going to do a choice lane in Nashville. That's where the first one is going. But they will look at a choice lane in Knoxville, but it may just be expansion, but it could be a choice lane. So we're going to see what's the best use of our money to leverage our dollars to get done what we need to get done. So we've given the folks the freedom. But two things I want to say about it. All lanes that are free now would stay free. Those folks, if you have choice lanes, the folks in the free lanes go 30% faster, and people can decide if it's worth their return on the investment to pay to go in the choice lane or to stay in the free lane. But it will save lives because ambulances go free, law enforcement goes free, and, so you're getting that bottleneck, and they don't pay in the choice lanes unless you go a minimum speed of 50 miles per hour. So it's, there's protections, but there's enough data there that it does work. But we're leveraging our dollars so we can expand to more system. It's not giving us everything we need, but it's a step in the right direction.
Right. Okay. So you had 4. I think we touched on 3 of your 4.
2.
2 of your 4 covers. So what's number 3?
Number 3 is the Promise and Futures. And this is something I've worked on for a couple of years. I actually had sponsored a child care task force that did a deep dive in the affordability, accessibility, and quality of child care in Tennessee. And so what Promise and Futures would do would be like Tennessee Promise. It would be a last dollar scholarship for child care, quote, really early childhood education. We talk a lot about the third grade reading and things like that. We've got to start earlier with that literacy development. But a lot of folks, when it costs as much to go to college to pay for child care as it does to go to UT, there's something wrong there. So we've got to make it more affordable to our folks. But there's got to be buy-in. It's got to be, they can use other stipends. They can do, there does have to be some buy-in by the folks. But that's something that I really, really, really want to do. The other one is,
real quick before we move on. So the idea is that the state is going to incentivize more child care to come on board because it'll give more people the ability to afford it.
No. Well, that's a component, but that's not a component of my bill.
Okay, because one of the things that in the child care conversation...
There's not enough.
It's a quantity issue as much as it is...
There are funds and grants available for people to develop child care, and we will continue to fund that and to make sure that piece is going into place. But that my bill is for the consumer that can afford it. And they can do last dollar scholarships. The money to fund that would come from, ideally, according to my bill, would come from the sports gambling money. And so it would be like lottery money because it has to go to education. And so it's very similar. But when I go around the country, I'm on a national legislative board. I've done a lot of task force and things. We get so much play and accolades for our Tennessee Promise. We were the first state to...
I know, I missed it by a year.
We were the first state to have free 2-year post-secondary education to give kids entering elementary school the hope that they could go on, and as long as they graduate from high school. This would be the first of its kind in the country, and I guarantee you all over the country they're talking about lack of child care, lack of affordability. Our economic loss is about $2 billion a year because of the lack of enough or affordable child care. But I still like to call it more early education because if it's quality, we're not really just talking about somebody opening up and babysitting the kids. We're talking about somebody that helps with those early educational skills at the same time allowing the parent to be able to go to work.
Right. Okay. So that's number 3. Number 4.
Number 4 is, I got a part of it passed this year, but elder financial abuse. I've done a lot with our elderly as far as the new Department of Aging. I mentioned the Silver Alert, but this would there is a $500 million a year that's identified that's stolen from seniors. This is not the scam that says, hey, my niece's birthday's coming up, I'm out of town, buy these gift cards, which has happened to me once. But this would be somebody taking somebody older to the bank, a vulnerable older person, and taking all their life savings, 100, 200, 300,000. And 50% of it is from people they know, 70% of it's substance abuse related. And the thing is, because a lot of it is from people they know, we know that a lot of it's not reported. And either they're too embarrassed or they want to protect their family member. But what we did this year was so I passed part of it this year where we funded to start up a call center in our Tennessee Bureau of Investigation that the financial institutes can call on if they suspect something. And then they can get somebody local out, quickly to try to follow up on it to keep this from happening. So they can there is a pause law, a federal pause law, but a lot of times the banks are hesitant to use it because it's their customers. They don't want to lose them as a customer.
It's my money. I want it out now.
But they can, if they can consult with this call center, these experts that are expert in it, tell them what's going on, kind of give them either reassurance, hey, that's probably okay. We're kind of concerned about that. We'll send somebody out. But ultimately, we'd like to get either extra agents around the state, fund extra agents around the state to be through TBI, or fund people in our district attorney's offices in each of the district attorney's divisions that totally focus on elder abuse. And that would be their absolute job. And we actually have something similar to that here. We've got folks over in Oak Ridge that have been focusing totally on that. And the amount they've been able to save from being stolen has been amazing. So this is something that, we need to continue to work on. And I'd like to get that last piece of it funded.
Okay. All right. So it wouldn't be a Becky show if I didn't have a couple of requests for the next session.
Okay.
Assuming you win your primary and go on to win the general.
We will. We feel confident. We've got lots of support. We have over 450 yard signs out in people's yards. We do not put things in right away. We have all our 4x4s are exactly where we've gotten permission to put them, and there's about 140 or so of those. So
I'm
we
debating
got
on
great
whether I'm going to go
support.
crazy this year and get everybody's in my yard again like I did a couple years
So,
ago.
but we want to make sure everybody gets out to vote, and all our supporters, and we will be working toward that effort because we need to be back there to finish the work that I'm continuing to do.
Okay, so in the transportation section, what? Because I think one of the things we have on a local issue is we have this. I hate this conversation, but we have it all the time about downtown parking and downtown accessibility and stuff like that. What are the odds? This obviously would be a long-term project. What are the odds that we can get some sort of state funding to put a light rail in Knox County?
It's possible. At one point, I'd worked a little bit on some light rail from downtown. Kind of over near UT out to the airport, and that was a possibility. We had some pushback on it, so that's not unheard of. I don't know where, we'd have to look where it hits on the priority scale because,
Right. I think it would take the county and the city governments to start working on it in conjunction with. It couldn't be the state just shoves it down.
No, it would have to come from the ground up. But, it's when you're looking at how to spend our state dollars, you're not looking between good and bad. You're looking between good and good. And so you have to look at your return on your investment. You got to look at the community support. Is
there any work in Nashville on the topic?
They've had conversations about it. I'm not sure where they are on that at this point because it still would be at the local level that they're working on it.
Hey,
sweetie. I'm fine.
All right, he's cool.
I have 4 dogs at my house, so 3 dogs. Excuse me.
Well, he doesn't like some Republicans for some reason. And I don't know what that's about,
but likes me. I'm a dog person.
You give the love, and he takes it. So anyway, Rowdy's on the show. Everybody, you guys know Rowdy. So they're still in transportation. What about a
Amtrak?
Maybe something to get like I understand that the rails, a rail between Knoxville and Nashville is problematic because of the plateau, but like I'd love the idea of like me and a buddy went to a Predators game last year, and it's a 2.5 hour drive. Go park downtown, we went parked downtown, got something to eat on Broadway, went to the game, got back in the car, drove back. I would love the idea of not having to do the mass driving part.
Well, I'd like that too, as much as I drive it.
Right? Yeah, and sure for you guys for work's sake
I could work the whole way to there.
Right? And I think it I don't know. It's one of those that it's understandably super expensive, but it seems like something that people would use, and that's an easy thing to say because it's. I don't know whether it's an Amtrak or some new project to go intrastate.
Yeah.
Bulk transit.
Well, right now the talk for Amtrak is more or less through from Atlanta to Chattanooga to Nashville. The funds are not there necessarily for intrastate. It's more interstate from state to state. I know folks up in Virginia. We've got a good friend that's a college friend of my husband's that lives in Southern Virginia. He's really interested in getting it from up around Bristol all the way down through Knoxville to Chattanooga to Atlanta. I'd love that. But
yeah, I wouldn't mind a DC trip on a train.
It would be great. You're much younger than me. You might see it. I probably won't see it. But I support any efforts that looks at things and looks at, what is reasonable, what is the long term, even if you get federal dollars, are those federal dollars going to maintain it, or are at some point is it going to start, we're going to be sucking money out of the state budget. So you have to look at everything the way it relates to everything else, because in and of itself, everything sounds great.
Right.
But you still got to see where can you get your best return on your investment.
Right. On some level, this is a zero-sum game. You only have so much money to spend.
Yes.
And if we spend it here, we can't spend it there.
Absolutely.
That makes sense to me. All right. So my other proposal, and this is going to be an unpopular one, so you probably shouldn't get on board because of for your own electoral success. I'm a little frustrated with the University of Tennessee's expansion in Knoxville.
Okay.
And this is another weird one because of the overlapping of entities issues. But as far as I understand it, this University of Tennessee is a state institution. Mm-hmm. It sits on the hierarchy of things at the state level, so it's technically above county and city in the hierarchy of things. How do I word this? I find it concerning how much the university is physically expanding through the city of Knoxville. This whole bridge thing, this walking bridge to the south side. And so, I guess to me, it's clear that the university intends to expand south of the river. There's talks, I don't know if it's been completed, there's talks that they're taking over the old rail station just north of the old city for art and architecture.
I think that's a temporary, I believe, I'm not sure about this because I've not had conversations about it. I believe that's a shorter term lease while maybe they're doing an expansion of the building or redoing the building on campus.
Okay.
That's what I suspect.
But I don't know how to there's this little nag that goes in the back of my head that Knoxville, if we're not careful, Knoxville is going to turn into a University of Tennessee company town, not a campus town like a Madison where I've spent time when I lived in Wisconsin and stuff like that. Like Madison is
it's a beautiful capital, though.
It is. It's a great town in general, but it's a fairly small area.
Well, it's between two rivers. I mean,
two
bodies of water.
But I think what Madison, with or without school in session, is like 180,000. Like it's smaller than the city of Knoxville, let alone Knox County.
Yeah.
And so because to me, this is something that I've been talking about a lot. Is that I feel like Knoxville is past that threshold. We're not a college town anymore. It's its own entity with a college in it. I like to reference, like, Georgia Tech is in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Atlanta isn't Georgia Tech adjacent. It is
right.
a thing that goes on inside that
right.
city.
Right.
And I think the city of Knoxville is getting to that point, but I like some of the stuff the university is doing, like moving south of the river. Their newest little expansion map that they put out. This is last year. They haven't done the new one for this year that I've seen, at least. It's like it seems to be that the university has intent to continue to physically grow out into, and it concerns me for the long term of Knoxville on how much influence the university has on
right.
local goings on, and just for tax base purposes. Like, there's all sorts of little parts, like like this bridge crossing the river. Well, the university already owns the landing spot, and so it's not locally property taxed. And they've already been buying property down there to put new facilities in and stuff like that. It's like, well, this bridge is supposed to, the idea is the bridge is going to encourage economic growth over there. Well, if most of that economic growth goes into the university buying stuff, then none of the tax revenue comes back anyway. And so, anyway, the point is, I don't know what I don't know exactly how to articulate what I'm getting at here, but it concerns me that the UT's expansion seems to be outpacing the city and the county's ability to contain it. Maybe that's
right.
another way to put it.
Well, and I get it. I think the issue is the University of Tennessee is under great leadership. We don't have the revolving door like we used to, and it's become extremely popular university. And we're getting 50,000 applicants for every freshman class, and we can take in about 7,000. There's no space to house all these students that are wanting to come to UT. So the problem is they need more housing, whether it's UT-owned housing or it's a partnership like some of the businesses are doing down on Cumberland. Those are being built privately, but they're university housing. I mean, it is, and I suspect that's some of what we might see south of the river is housing built for UT students. That we would promote, that University of Tennessee would promote to their incoming students or to their sophomore class, because it's mostly freshmen or out-of-state people that can live on campus right now. And so it's hard when you're growing faster than you have the facilities for. Right,
but I guess my point is that is happening at the same time city county is expanding faster than it could handle it.
Right.
And
right.
so we have, like, especially in the housing part of the conversation, it's like, yes, I get it. I understand that's like they're building multi-use down on Cumberland, and it'll be apartments and stuff like that that'll mostly go to UT kids and stuff like that. It's like, okay,
and they'll
cool.
pay taxes.
They'll build 100 units and they'll all be full of students, and so anybody else that wants to move to Knoxville it's not opening opportunity.
I agree. Well, it is a challenge. I would rather have the positive economic growth, than have negative everybody leaving us and there's no jobs and there's no nothing. So it is a problem, but it's a problem on the positive side.
Right.
And so that does take forethinking by the local, especially the local leaders. I mean, that have to work with this. But I mean, it does on our part too. And I am a graduate of the University of Tennessee, and of course, real excited about our baseball team right now. We've got this shot.
I know, like, I'm not a baseball fan, but it's always fun. I've had this conversation with a bunch of people. Like, I'm not a baseball fan, but if I'm in Atlanta and there's a game, I'll go to the game. It's more, it's like there's something fun about being in it, and especially in this situation, even though we're not in Omaha right now.
Well,
it's still just a fun thing, even if you're not into it.
Well, I grew up, at the Smokies Stadium. Both my brothers were bat boys. My dad was involved with the Smokies. Just a couple of blocks down from where we're taping this at Rocky Hill Ballpark. My husband and I coached there 22 years. We actually have the second little field on the right named after us. Little bitty sign, but it's
super little. I'm going to have to go back up there. We go
it's behind the backstop.
We take the dog up there. A couple times a week.
I spent decades, 22 years. We went from the first team only winning forfeits to the last team sixth in a national tournament.
Nice.
So it's I enjoy the sport. I don't have a whole lot of time to watch, but I do like watching the Vols because they're a fun team to watch.
You'll be glued to the TV tomorrow night around 7:30 watching that game.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's always good to be with you, and just know that I believe in Knoxville. I believe in our state. And that's one of the reasons I know that I can continue to help people. Am I going to please everybody all the time? No, we're not always going to agree, but I promise to always be respectful, to work hard, and to listen.
All right, how can people find you? Website, that kind of stuff. Do some plugs.
Just BeckyMassey.com is our website, and you can reach me, or Becky.Massey@Comcast.net is my email.
Did everybody catch Becky Massey any of my episode for me? That was beautiful, beautiful transition work, Becky. I appreciate you coming out, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right, we did it. Becky Massey came and talked to me like Becky Massey likes to do. That is July 12th is early voting. August 4th or something like that is election day for the primaries. That's county general as well. Take your time. Read the ballot. Do some research, find out about your candidates. Go back and listen to the Monica interview if you haven't as well. You can compare your candidates just like that. We're Almost Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. Check out all the cool stuff we got going on there. Look out for Hollaboo 24, October 26th. Going to be a Soapbox Derby Street Fair rock and roll show. You should come out and participate in any way you want to. Text us to your friends. Go to your favorite podcast provider. Listen to us there. Tell everybody about us. Share what you can. And stay in touch. Sam and I at least Sam and I will have a show this week.